Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Lex, and I am here today to talk about single sign-on or SSO. A little bit about me. My name is Lex. I'm a senior tech lead here at Xplor, and I've been here with the company now for about 5 years. And I've had a hand in building or touching or working on almost everything that we've got here in Xplor. I've seen a lot, I've been through a lot. But in particular, I'm extra famous as the CCS guy and as the logging in guy. So for all of the pain you've experienced with Xplor AD and also all of the good things, I say sorry. Today here, we're talking about SSO. So what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk a little bit about what SSO is. Then I'm going to go into federated identity. And last but not least, I'll do a little demo as well. So I have to apologize in advance of all. I am very, very, very nervous doing this. This is absolutely not my cup of tea at all. I'm very much a behind the desk kind of person. Moving on. All right. So the first things first, what is SSO? And now the thing with SSO, the gotcha that always happens with SSO is that it's an incredibly broad term. If you ask someone what SSO is, every person you ask will have a different answer. The long and the short, if you go as wide or as broad as you possibly can, the SSO is can be defined as kind of one set of credentials being able to be used in multiple websites and accounts. And I just want to break that down a little bit. First of all, credential, account, what are those? So a credential is what you use to log in with. So if you're going to a website, usually that's a username and password or email address and password, those are your credentials. But also, you might also have something like a session cookie, that also counts as a credential, or an auth token, that's also a credential. Here at Xplor, you generally log in with your username and password, and then once you're in, you get an auth token, and that auth token is also your credential. And then account. What do I mean by account? Well, an account is really a user in the system. So, for example, one person might have several accounts. It's typically something like, in Xplor's case, you might say, be an educator at Center A, as well as a parent at Center A. And you might even be a staff member at that same center. And so that one person might have or might be represented in a system as having several different accounts. And so the idea of SSO is really that you have one set of credentials, like one username and password that you can log in with. And with that one set of credentials, you can access any of the accounts within that system that you might have. And then you can also go from website to website with using those same credentials and being logged in. So if I were to ask the question, do you think we have SSO here at Xplor? Well, kind of, right? We have Xplor ID. And Xplor ID is already a form of SSO. You have one username and one password, and you can have any number of parent or educators or guests linked to that Xplor ID. And that Xplor ID, you can log into many different websites with it. So in effect, we do have SSO, but that obviously isn't what I'm here to talk about today. I'm not here to talk about what we already have. I'm here to talk about what we're going to do in the future. And so this is the kind of the problem with SSO, though, is that it's such a broad term that if you come to me and say, don't you have SSO at Xplor? I could be cheeky and say, yeah, we already do. It's Xplor ID. But the key thing here is that there's lots of different things inside SSO. And so the important thing to discuss is really, what is it that we want to get out of SSO or logging in general? And so what we've done is we've reached out to our customers, to you, and we've had chats through our support team, through our product teams, through our account engagements and things like that. And what we've come to is we've got a kind of an idea, at least, and please feel free to tell me that this is wrong. But our understanding of what you would like is you want your customers, you are our customers, and you would like to be able to have your users log in to Xplor with their credentials or their existing credentials. You want automated onboarding and offboarding. You want profiles, that is like the data like names and phone numbers and things like that between these different systems to be kept in sync. And you'd like some form of role-based access control. So that is our understanding of what you'd like. And this is what we do not have here at Xplor today. At the moment, all of our onboarding, all of our password creations are Xplor ID. It's a very manual setup, and you have to have a specific Xplor ID, specific to Xplor, rather than being able to use credentials or login systems that our customers already have in place for your employees. So this is what we're missing, or at least this is what we think we're missing. Again, please feel free to come and tell us that we've missed something here, or that this isn't what you're after. But this is what we think you're after. And so now that we kind of have this and we know this, or we're working off of the assumption that this is right, then some of the things we have to start thinking about when we decide what under this giant big banner of SSO is worth building or is worth doing. What is it that we want to do? And so we've got to consider a lot of different elements here. First of all, we have our users. We have, as you're probably aware at Xplor, we have a lot of different user types: parents, educators, guests, and various levels of admins. And so the question that we have is, which one of these do we really want this solution to target? In general, if I come back to this previous slide, talking about your customers and your users that exist, well, your users tend to be more educators and admins. But that's not to say parents and guests aren't important either. We definitely want to make sure they're taken care of. They are our largest number of credentials or user type, the single biggest user type we have at Xplor. And we want to make sure that whatever we do can be extended and work for all of them in the future. And then we have to ask, which credentials do we want to use? We have Xplor ID. If you're, there are also things like Gmail or social logins that you can use. And obviously, they also have credentials within the customer systems. So we have all these different sets of credentials, and which ones make sense? Which ones don't make sense to use? Do all of them make sense together, or maybe only one? These are the sorts of questions that we have to ask ourselves and really think through when we decide what SSO solution we want. We also have to think about which systems we're talking about here. We've got Office, Playground, Home, lots of different systems here at Xplor. We've got the apps and the website of things. And so we need to make sure that whatever solution we come up with or whatever we decide to use makes sense and works smoothly for all of those experiences. If as you're probably familiar with, logging into Playground Web today is a vastly different experience to logging into the Playground app. And we need to take those differences into account as we come up with a solution. Because what we really want to do is build one solution that works everywhere for everyone. And so, last but not least, of course, is security. If I come back again to the previous slide, all of these things that we've got here, all of this boils down to better security, right? We want all of these things because we want to have a tighter system, tighter control of our data and information, better security, less chances for data leakage, less chances for users to be around that shouldn't be around and things like that. We really want as much of the logging in to be managed and as secure as possible. So of course, the security is probably the most important consideration we need to take with all of this as well. And this comes into things like one of the biggest items we've heard about is multi-factor authentication. For those of you who don't know, multi-factor authentication, or MFA, is basically where you get an SMS and put in the SMS code to log in. Or maybe you get an email and an email code to log in. Or maybe it's using an authenticator app or something like that. But MFA just means any of those. So MFA is really, really important for security these days. Passwords can get compromised, but the combination of a password with an MFA keeps everything really, really nice and secure. Password policies is another thing. The password policies that are in place for, say, a parent don't necessarily make sense to be the same for an internal staff member or an admin. You probably want your admin to have tighter, stronger controls over your passwords. And I know our customers, you all have password policies that you want to have enforced. And you'd like Xplor to enforce those too. But as every customer has different requirements and different desires, it's hard for, well, it's really important that we have a solution that can work, that can provide the password policies that you need. And the other one is account recovery. If you've forgotten your password and you need to log in again, you need to do a password reset or something along those lines. Exactly how that flow should work at the moment, again, is dictated by Xplor. And I'm sure you all have your own means of how you want account recovery to work. Maybe it is completely automated with an email. Maybe you want it to need to go through an internal support team so they can verify all the data and do it manually on behalf of the user. All of any and above all make perfect sense. And again, we want to pick a solution that really, really works. And so we've looked at all of this. We've had a big think about what is and isn't important, or not isn't important, but what is the most important, I should say. And what we've come to really is this idea of what we call federated identity. So that's a big word, or two big words, federated identity. What does it actually mean? Well, I had asked myself that question when I first saw the term. So I hopped into Google and I Googled it. And the definition that came at the top of Google was federated identity is a method of linking a user's identity across multiple separate identity management systems and allows users to quickly move between systems while maintaining security. And I went, cool, that tells me absolutely nothing. And so then what we did is we spent hours and hours and hours reading documentation and papers left, right, and center. And eventually we got to the short of it, which federated identity is actually just your login page, our system. And it's a complex flow. It's a complex way to work, but also I feel like this is a solution that really, really makes the most sense for everything we're after here. So to give it a show, I guess what does it look like? So a user might come into the system and say they open up Playground, maybe on the web. And then what Playground can do is, rather than asking you for your username there and then, it can redirect that user to a customer's login page, an external to Xplor login page. So your login page. If you have Azure AD or an identity management solution, you will already have a login page with that identity management solution. That is where we would redirect those users to. And then the user inside that customer login page can log in and do their MFA. So they can provide their credentials and they can be logged in. What then happens is that user or that customer login page then redirects the user to Xplor ID with a special type of authentication token called an access token, and that gets given to Xplor ID. And then Xplor ID can look at that token, validate it to make sure it's safe and secure and has definitely come from the right system. And then it can issue the Xplor ID auth token that we already have in use for that particular user. And then Xplor ID, after all that's done, Xplor ID can redirect the user back into Playground and they're already logged into the system. So all of this is to say, federated identity is a long way of saying, again, your login page, our system. Pretty straightforward at the end. Some of the technical details about federated identity. First of all, federated identity uses what's called OpenID Connect, or OIDC. I'm sure some of you here have probably heard of that today, or some of you here have probably already heard of that. OIDC is an open existing standard. If you've used Azure Active Directory or basically any kind of identity management platform ever, they probably support OIDC. Like 99% of them already do. It's a very, very open standard. It's the way or the flow, like a protocol, whatever you want to call it. It's the thing that almost every identity system already uses. And so because of that, we're certain that by relying or using this OIDC flow, the systems that you already have will be able to integrate with us, or will be able to do this integration. And what's really, really beneficial about this as well is that we can build this into Xplor ID today, and in the future, we may move to a third-party tool. At the moment, we're using Xplor ID, But in the future, we may decide that we have so many users and so many auth flows we need to provide that we might be better off moving to a system like Okta or Auth0. For those of you who don't know, Okta and Auth0, they are external or third-party companies that do like a logging in systems, basically. And they're usually used for big, extremely large number of user environments. And they're really, really good at integrating with a lot of different systems. And OIDC can work in Xplor AD today, and we can port it over to Okta and Auth0 in the future if we decide as Xplor to move into those or to start using those. The solution is secure for both web and mobile apps. And this is really, really important. There's a lot of flows out there in SSO and in federated identity that work for web and don't work for mobile at all, or work for mobile and don't work for web. But this specific federated identity solution that we've got works for both web and mobile, which is important for us because we want it to work in the Playground app and in our websites as well. And the most important thing about this is that you, the customers, really remain in control of everything. It's your user accounts, they're your password policies, they're your MFA, it's your onboarding and offboarding, and you get to control what information gets exposed to Xplor. This is the true benefit of federated identity. By using your login page, all of the things that you already have in your existing Active Directories or identity management systems, all of those exist and will and can be used. So all of your internal or pre-existing flows are there, and Xplor doesn't need to build or integrate with those specifically. You already have those there, and they work out of the box with this federated identity flow. Moving on. So I put this slide in here because Vivek told me I had to make it really, really clear that everything I've talked about today seems kind of simple, but it's actually pretty complicated. This flow you can see here, it's hard to see this picture. I'm sorry. It is just a really, really big picture. But as you can see, coming down to the bottom, even I'm looking really, really close. And there's a number 23 at the bottom. There's a 23-step flow that we're talking about here. So it's a big flow, lots of steps along the way. So it's complicated under the hood, but we make it simple. The integration work we will do will make this simple. But now, what I wanted to do is show you a demo of federated identity actually working. This is a pre-recorded video, so I'll just play this now.
Hello everyone. What I've got here is a demo of a federated identity flow set up in Xplor. So what we have here in Xplor, we have an internal Azure Active Directory that we use to manage our staff members. And what I've done is I've set up a federated identity flow between Xplor, Xplor's AD, and Xplor ID itself. So what you see here, this is just an example, and keep in mind this whole thing is a demo, so none of this is in production, none of this is live, this is purely a sample we've put together for demonstration purposes. But what you can see here is we've got a login page, and this login page, rather than asking you to put in your username and password, it just has this login with SSO button. So if we click this button, what it will do is it will take us to our internal Azure AD's login page. And so you see it's got the Xplor logo here. This is Xplor's Azure AD. And it's asking me to log in with my credentials for that Xplor Active Directory. So if I come in here and log in, there's my credentials, sign in. It's now going to sign me in. It's going to ask for my two-factor authentication. I've put that in, so I'll verify that as well. And then here it's going to ask me if I want to stay signed in or not. I'm going to say yes. And you can see then what it's done is it's logged me in, and now it's taken me over to Playground, and it's come here and it's immediately said, you don't have access to Playground. Now, it's saying that because the user that I set up at the moment doesn't belong to any particular groups inside AD. And so what that means is that even though the user can log in, they don't have any permissions set, so they can't access the system. So what I'll do is I'll log out here, and then I'll come into our Azure AD. And as you can see in this particular group, there are no members in this group at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to come and I'm going to add my user into this group. And it said, cool, it's adding, but it's going to take a little while. So we're going to cut here and come right back because it does take about 3 or 4 minutes of waiting for this user to appear and for AD to sort itself out. Okay, we've waited a few minutes, and now what we can see is that the Lex Malta user is inside a member of this group. So now what I'll do is I'll come back to our SSO page here, and I'll click Login with SSO again. Now the important thing to note is that what you saw me do before was log out of Playground, but I did not log out of the Azure AD. So what's going to happen when I click this Login with SSO button is it's going to log me into Playground automatically without needing to put a username or password in. Once again, that's because I'm logged out of Playground, but I'm still logged in to our Active Directory. So if I click that Login with SSO button, you see it's loading, it's taking me to Playground, and here it is, I'm inside, and it's saying, look, I can a parent and an educator, and I can come in and start accessing this test service and start doing some work inside Playground straight away, no logging in required, all happening automatically through the Azure AD.
Very cool. And that is the end of the demo there. So as you can see from that demo, we were able to get a federated identity flow happening, and we were able to have a user log in, didn't even need credentials at the end there, log in directly into Playground, and their access was controlled via groups in AD. And this then, sorry.
Hello, everyone.
Start that again. Yeah, cool. And so this really then comes into kind of some of the next bits that we're talking about with federated identity. So how does some of the behind the scenes of how federated identity works? The user logs in to your identity management solution or provider, Azure AD, and we get given this access token. And that access token will contain some pieces of information about the user who just logged in. Generally speaking, like a username or an email address to help identify who that person is, as well as some information about what they can or can't do. And that tends to be based off of what groups that user is enrolled into in your user management system. And what we need to do then, in order to integrate that with Xplor, is we need to link that access token to an existing user in Xplor there and then. Or we might need to onboard or create a profile for that user if we've never seen them before. And the other thing that we need to do in order for this to really work is we need to be able to create a mapping between what groups the user is in and what permissions they have to do in Xplor. And now it's that latter one that's really, really important to us and the future of SSO and what that looks like. So with all of this pieced together, what we've kind of got is, if we think about how we could roll this out, what we've got is an idea of a kind of three-phased approach here. Phase one is the easiest, the quickest, and the most generic. Once we get this working, it can work for pretty much everyone. Phase two and beyond requires a bit more work, a bit more effort to build, and it's probably a bit more custom as well. There's probably things specific to each individual customer that we need to take into account in order to make them work. So what do I mean by all this? So phase one, what phase one really looks like, it would look like then is users onboarding into Xplor manually. That means that you're creating your manual profiles inside of your profiles inside the Xplor system manually in the same way you would today. But then we have the federated identity login flow. So rather than those users logging into Xplor with Xplor credentials, they can log in with with the federated identity flow. And then automated offboarding of users would be there too, because as that user gets offboarded in your system, their ability to log into the Xplor system happens automatically. Then phase two would be, we would focus more on the automated onboarding and account creation. So that would be Xplor's never seen this user before, but they're logging in for the first time. How can we automatically provision them in the place where they need to be? Phase three, we start talking about things like full profile syncing. And this means keeping data between our systems up to date. And you can see why this is becoming more and more custom. Depending on where you keep your profile data and what profile data you keep, keeping that data in sync may be straightforward, may be hard. I don't know, we don't know. And part of what we want to do is speak to you all and find out what it is you want to do and what makes the most sense. And we've also talked about role-based access control. And this is a bit of an open question because there's some things we could do in phase one to give role-based access control, or it could be the most custom, most deepest integration we need to do between our systems. And that, again, really depends on you and what you want out of SSO and what we might need to build in order to meet those requirements. So again, that's a bit of a question mark, an open question mark. It could be its own phase. It could fit into any of the other phases that are listed there. And then the hard part is we have a bunch of questions. We have a lot of stuff that's left open-ended from all of this. Things like, what does the data in your identity management solutions or AD look like? How do you structure your users? How can we link those users to users in Xplor? All of those questions we need to understand and get answers to in order to build this integration. Probably the first time we do this integration, we will probably need to work out a common standard way of saying these groups mean these permissions. And from that, we can then expand that solution beyond that point. But we need to do that once, and we need to make it a standard that works for everyone. We need to think as well about data that lives inside and outside your user management system. If we're talking about automated onboarding, there might be things like, say, working with children's checks, where that data probably doesn't make sense to live in something like an Azure AD, but it definitely makes sense to live in Xplor. If we want profile syncing or automated onboarding, how would we get that data automatically into Xplor? These are some open-ended questions we have. Again, we need your help to help us understand what does and doesn't make sense here. I mentioned role-based access control earlier and talking about that. And again, all of these questions are really open-ended, like how much of what we build is generic and how much of what we build is going to be a custom solution. And so basically wrapping all of this up, all of this stuff about SSO up, we kind of come to, we need your help. We don't have all the answers ourselves. This is an integration between us, and we need to talk with you to help us understand what will give you the most value out of an SSO or a federated identity solution. Is there a feature that you want or that is really, really important to you that we haven't talked about today? We want to hear from you. We want to know. We need to get an understanding of what a standardized mapping of groups to Xplor roles looks like. And again, we need to talk to you to help understand and get an idea of what makes the most sense. And the big thing, I think, is that we're aiming to start all of the development work on SSO next year. It is slated for 2023. Hashan will talk about it in his future talk. But the big thing is that we want to start talking with you about it now. We want to be able to start the development work early next year. And what that means is we want to get some of the answers to these questions and some of the ideas about what does and doesn't make sense from you now. So please, if you're interested, sign up. Speak to your account manager or your account executive, or speak to Hashan or Vivek. But please reach out and speak to us so we can get in touch, and you can talk with me directly, and we can talk about what does and doesn't make sense for SSO.